Hello and welcome everybody to today's episode of the JBA All In Podcast.
Our podcast is currently streaming on Podbean and YouTube. The JBA All In Podcast is your one-stop sports chat podcast for news around the sports world.
My name is Jack.
My name is Brendan.
We have a very stacked lineup of segments and news today, so let's jump right into it.
All right, it's time for the hot topic, everyone. First up, Leonard Fournette agreed to a one-year deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just yesterday, shortly after being released by the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Buccaneers are clearly going all in on this 2020 season with Mr. Tom Brady coming in the offseason. Now they got Fournette and Ronald Jones taking up the backfield. Bruce Arians did say that Ronald Jones would be the starter to start week one, which is interesting. I think it's interesting. But, Jack, what are your thoughts on the Leonard Fournette signing and any thoughts on Ronald Jones still being the starter?
It's about time that Leonard Fournette finally went back on a team. A lot of people say that he's a draft bust. In my opinion, he's not a draft bust. He's had 2,000-yard rushing seasons out of 3 seasons in total, I believe, and he's still 25. I'm just confused why Leonard Fournette isn't the week one starter. In my opinion, now he's the best running back on the team. He definitely should be starting. He has stuff to prove. He's going to be playing his best football. I'm not an NFL coach or an NFL front office, but I have no idea what Bruce Arians is doing. I'm sure he has good reasoning behind it. But, you had a really solid wide receiver core. In fact, I'd say elite, depending on how good, someone like Gronk plays. And just having Leonard Fournette just there to run and have, because I say he's above average. Now they've got a pretty decent running back core. I say start Fournette. I don't know what he's doing. He's definitely the best running back on the team. Maybe there's things in training camp that we haven't seen yet. I don't know if Fournette has arrived at training camp yet, but maybe once Bruce Arians sees him practice and play a little bit more, maybe the verdict will change. But I'm kind of confused why he isn't starting, but I guess there's a lot of reasons why he couldn't be. Obviously, he was just signed. Maybe he wasn't at training camp. We'll just have to see as the weeks go by.
Yeah, the main reason that Bruce Arians decided that Ronald Jones would be the starter still was because Leonard Fournette hadn't proved anything on the team yet, and Ronald Jones has worked so hard to get that starting spot. And he said, quote, "It's his job. He's got it. He's got to screw it up to lose it, and I don't see that happening." But, Jack, how do you see this? How does this affect the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a whole, as a team? How do you think this affects their performance in this upcoming season?
I saw the championship contenders. I know you really dislike them. I think they're a pretty good team. But I think, he does have a point. But he has to mess up to lose it. I think that's not really the smartest, ideology or philosophy, because Fournette could probably outperform him, and I see him outperforming him, or I see Fournette being the best running back in the team. But overall, I think this really helps them. Now they've got an even better running back core. Fournette can run the ball. We know this. We've seen him do it. And if he can get really to the level that he was in college, which I think he still has the potential to do, I think this is going to be great for the Buccaneers. He's only locked up for a 1-year deal. This is kind of just, we'll pick you up. We kind of need some depth at running back. You're pretty solid. No teams are looking, so we'll pick you up. But, if he performs well, I can definitely see him re-signing with a team or signing with someone else. And if that doesn't happen, I'd be baffled. He's good, and I don't really know why people weren't pursuing him. I know it's a little bit late, and the season is starting very soon. But, I think this is good for the Buccaneers. And I kind of see this as, kind of like a 49er situation where you have multiple running backs kind of switching in and out, running the ball with, one standout. I'd say Raheem Mostert's probably the standout in that running back core. So I kind of see this as, a kind of that situation. I think they'll be sharing carries just earlier in the season to see who's going to be the definite starter. So I think this is good. It's going to have some challenge. Both running backs will be playing at their full potential, so the Buccaneers can really see who's the best for their team and who's the best fit.
They also have Sean McCoy to kind of fill a receiving void out of the backfield. To say I really dislike them, I don't really dislike them. I think they're a playoff team. I just didn't think they're a Super Bowl contender. I still don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. I think they're closer now because obviously running game was a concern for me. I do think this makes them closer. I think they can make a difference in the playoffs. I think they can win one game. I think they can make it out of the wild card round as a wild card. I think the Saints will still win that division, and then I think they could potentially make an upset in the divisional round. We'll see. But I think this makes them a lock for the playoffs in my mind. Whether it's a wild card or a division winner, I think it'll be one or the other. I think it'll be wild card personally, but it'll definitely be one or the other. I think them and the Seahawks for me are both locks as wild cards in the NFC. I think the Niners win the division over the Seahawks. And then I think there's probably three other teams that are battling out for that last playoff spot. The Rams, Cowboys, and then whoever does not win the NFC North. So either the Packers or the Vikings. One of those two teams. It's really close for me on that one. But I think Leonard Fournette, he's great and all. I definitely understand the reasoning for Ronald Jones still being the starter. I think eventually Leonard Fournette will win it back within the first few weeks of the NFL season because, in my opinion, he's just a better running back overall. He was an elite running back in 2017, his rookie year. And then, obviously, the next year, he dealt with some issues. But I still think he can return to that elite level. I think it's possible. And last year, he wasn't all too bad either. I think he's a better running back than Ronald Jones. It's just that Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette's coming in. He's learning a whole new playbook. And he's also learning a new system. He's getting acquainted with his teammates. Ronald Jones, he's been on that team a lot longer than Fournette has. He's been on the team longer than just one day. So he knows the playbook. He's got chemistry with the team. So I think that's why he's going to be the starter at least to start the season. He'll be the starter. And I agree with that. I just don't think he should be a starter all season. I think eventually Leonard Fournette should and will win it back. All right. I think now we move into MLB Trade Deadline review. Some of the hot stories regarding the MLB Trade Deadline that was a couple of days ago. First story is obviously the Padres. They're going all in right now. Made a bunch of trades. They brought in right-hander Mike Clevinger, catchers Jason Castro and Austin Nola, first baseman and designated hitter Mitch Moreland, along with reliever Trevor Rosenthal. Obviously you don't acquire talent like that without giving up a haul of prospects, and the Padres obviously gave up a good amount of prospects in order to get these players. If we're grading teams on their MLB trade deadline trades, Padres will probably be ace in the class, highest grade, 100% easily. They made great moves on the trade deadline. Jack, what do you think of the trades, and also how do you think this affects where they will end up at the end of the season?
Okay, so I think we can both come out and say it. The Padres are not going to finish first in the division because you've got the best team in the league with the Dodgers, and they're going to be hard to overtake. The Padres are already 6 games behind, but this is really going to help them, especially in the wild card. The wild card race is pretty tight right now, so the Padres really needed anything they can get, and they haven't been stellar the past few seasons, to say the least, but they've got a lot of hope right now. They've got a lot of solid players, and especially with this trade deadline, Mike Clevinger, he's probably the biggest piece in this trade deadline for the Padres. He's a really solid player. He's really going to help them out with depth in their pitching. So I think they get a solid A, but, as you said, they give a lot of prospects, so I don't think they're in win-now mode, but they're definitely kind of building around Fernando Tatis Jr. with a lot of more experienced players, because I think they're going to be making a push in the next few seasons. Tatis is an NL MVP candidate, so I think you should really look out for the Padres. I don't think they're going to be any better than the Dodgers anytime soon, but they're going to be one of those teams that's not the best in their division, but one of the best teams, and they're just behind one of the most stacked teams in the entire league. So I think this pretty much locks them up as guaranteed wild card unless they do something crazy stupid, or if they drop as far as the Rockies did with, I think, a 7-game losing streak. So as long as they don't do anything dumb, as long as no one gets injured, as long as they just play well, they keep playing like they've been doing recently, I think a few more pieces and they could be one of the best teams.
I agree. You pretty much said it all there. I think we can probably move to the next one. All right, so the Arizona Diamondbacks are really just kind of shipping out all their good players. They got rid of Robbie Ray, they got rid of Starling Marte, and they got rid of Archie Bradley. They currently have the worst record in their division. They're 14-24. They have the third worst record in the National League. My question for you, Jack, are the Diamondbacks tanking?
I definitely think they're tanking right now. They got rid of a lot of core pieces. They again, like the Padres, they haven't been good in the past few seasons. The Dodgers have just really been dominating, like, the NL West. They've been dominating for a very long time. I can't remember the last time someone was on top of them. If I had to guess, it was probably the Giants around like 2012, 2013. But I feel like all the teams in the NL West have just kind of fallen off, especially the Giants and Diamondbacks. The Padres are getting better. The Rockies are getting better too. But I think that the Diamondbacks are definitely going to go down, and now this is kind of just blowing their team up. I see this being kind of like a Philadelphia 76ers situation. It was a few years. I know most rebuilds are a few years, but the Sixers just got rid of literally everything, got so many picks, and maybe it's not a good idea for the Diamondbacks because it hasn't been really working out the way the Sixers wanted it to. But I think the Diamondbacks are definitely tanking right now. They were already one of the worst teams in all of baseball. This definitely is going to make them probably top 3, top 2 worst teams in baseball. This is big. If they could rebuild correctly, if they can get a bunch of young prospects, because there's a lot of young prospects out there that are showing a lot of promise. It's really hard to gauge. I really don't know what's going to happen, but they're definitely tanking right now.
Yeah, I agree. They're definitely tanking right now. And it's probably for the best. I mean, I don't see where they can really go with the roster they have right now. So I just think they really have to go into rebuild mode now. So this will be. It's been a long rebuild for the Diamondbacks, and they're going into another one. So hopefully this next one can work out well for Diamondbacks and their fans. All right, and then finally, the final topic we're going to cover is another NL West story. The NL West and the trade deadline. Lots of stuff going on there. But this story is really about what didn't go on. The Dodgers, obviously, they are the best team in baseball record-wise, and they are the best team in baseball at the trade deadline record-wise. And they made barely any moves. They didn't really make any moves. All they did was really ship out Ross Stripling for 2 prospects. So, it's just some people were really surprised that the Dodgers didn't make any moves because obviously contending teams like to make big moves at the trade deadline to bolster their chances. I think that the Dodgers just didn't want to hurt what they had going on already. They were really in a rhythm with their current roster, and they still are. Everyone is really clicking right now. Mookie is great. He's, if the season ended now, he'd be an MVP candidate. Obviously, Cody Bellinger's come out of a slump. He currently has 10 home runs already. He's second for the Dodgers. So he's obviously been doing a lot better than he was about a couple weeks ago. And then also there's just the rest of the roster in general is playing really well. Seager has a .310 average. Austin Barnes, Justin Turner, Rios, Pollock, Chris Taylor, Matt Beatty, Kike, Will Smith, Muncy, Jacques. They're all doing really well. The only person who's really struggling on the Dodgers roster right now is Gavin Lux. But, he's young. He's got ways to go, I think, before he can be their solid starter at second base. I think he's got 1 or 2 more years before they can really, keep him in the majors for good. But that's pretty much it. He's the only one that's struggling. I think the Dodgers their roster is just so good right now. It just makes sense not to touch anything. I think people are realizing that now. I think people overreacted, like, oh, wow, why did they not trade anybody, or why did they not trade for anybody? But I think it just makes sense. If the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, really comes into play here.
Yeah, I mean, Ross Stripling wasn't having the best season, and he's been good for us for a long time. I think he arrived to the club in 2016, 2015. And we got 2 prospects because the Dodgers aren't an old team. They're not the youngest team. Like, they don't have a bunch of the youngest prospects, but I think most of the players in their starting lineup are under the age of, I think, 28. Mookie's 26 or 27. Cody Bellinger is obviously, I think, 25 or 26 now. I could be completely wrong. Don't quote me on that. But, yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They don't really need to fix anything. They don't need to add anything.
that's going to wrap it up for the hot topic. I think we're moving to fast breaking news now. Firstly, Earl Thomas, obviously, about a week ago, was released from the Ravens due to an incident with Chuck Clark. That the news is a little bit old. We just haven't been able to cover it in the past week. We're going to have a new upload schedule now. We've been really inconsistent in the past, but we have a new upload schedule now. It's where we're going to be recording Friday afternoons, and we're going to be uploading either Friday, like late Friday nights, or Saturdays at some point. So you can expect videos Friday nights or Saturdays at some points. And yeah, so we're going to be doing that. So, but back to the episode. Earl Thomas was released, due to an incident with Chuck Clark, and then probably there's also most likely stuff leading up to that. We won't talk too much about what happened because, that's already been talked about. But what we will talk about is who should sign Earl Thomas, who should pursue Earl Thomas the hardest to try to make a run at the Super Bowl.
So my choice for this is probably going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll make it quick. You could just move Jalen Mills back to cornerback and then pick up Earl Thomas because they're really not locked versus the Cowboys for their division, and I think this could really push them over the hump if they get a solid safety. So I think their best choice is probably taking Jalen Mills, putting him back at cornerback, then taking Earl Thomas and putting him at free safety.
My pick is the Cowboys. The Cowboys probably have just enough cap space to sign him, like on a 1-year deal maybe if he's willing to go there. They probably would have to make some cuts, but they did cut Clinton Dix the other day, which means that they obviously are in need to fill that position. And, they could be trying to make a move with Earl Thomas. We'll see. I think they should do it because I think they'd be my favorite to win that division, definitely, if they were able to sign Earl Thomas. Their biggest weakness right now is their secondary. They lost Byron Jones. They lost Jeff Heath. They lost a bunch of good players in that secondary to get Earl Thomas, one of the best free safeties in the league, if not the best free safety in the league. He pretty much – he's 2 safeties and half a cornerback out there on the field. He can pretty much cover, like, the entire back half of the field on his own. He's so talented. I think that the Cowboys could sign him. That'd be great. It'd really help. I think that puts them in Super Bowl contention, in my opinion. Not as I wouldn't consider them as good as a team like the Chiefs or the Ravens or the Saints or the Niners or anything like that. But they'd be a team that's like kind of a dark horse Super Bowl contender. Them and the Bills, I think, are 2 teams who they're contenders. They're contenders in my mind. Well, Bills are now, and then the Cowboys would be beside Thomas. Contenders in my mind, but it's just that I think they're a little bit outmatched by some of the other teams in their conference. That's, I think, how the situation would be for the Cowboys. But I still think it'd be a good idea to pursue Earl Thomas. And all right, let's move in to our next story. Steve Nash was hired by the Brooklyn Nets to be the next head coach. Steve Nash has no NBA coaching experience, but obviously he was kind of a player coach on the floor when he was on the Suns, and he's a very polarizing figure. A lot of people know his name, 2-time MVP, Hall of Famer. Him and Kevin Durant have a good relationship. So I think that this move, it's interesting because there's obviously good coach candidates out there. Nate McMillan got fired by the Pacers. I don't think they should have done that. I think that he's had to deal with his best player being out in the play for when they got to the playoffs the past couple of years now. So I don't think he deserved to get fired. I think he's a good coach. I think he would have been a good option here. Also, there's also other candidates out there like Tyronn Lue's out there. And then obviously other firings like Gentry and Boylan are out there. They're potential candidates. I still think – I'm not saying that Nash isn't a good candidate. I mean, I just think that with no coaching experience ever in the NBA, it's just really risky. But, the Nets are kind of going risky right now, getting KD and Kyrie. So we'll see where this goes. I think the Nets obviously are going to be a contender this upcoming year in the NBA or next year in the NBA with their star power of KD and Kyrie. And then obviously Steve Nash now is kind of a third star on the team. I think it's going to be a really interesting team. I think there's going to be a lot of bandwagon fans. There's Kyrie, KD, and Steve Nash are all fan favorites. So we'll see where this goes. It's just it's tough to really analyze the situation with Steve Nash being the coach because there's just nothing really we have to know how good he could possibly be. There's no evidence of why he could be a good coach or why he could be a bad coach. So it's all a mystery, really. They're just kind of taking a risk, a shot in the dark, and it's either going to pay off big time or it's going to backfire horribly. All right, let's move on to our final topic in Fast Break News. So the NBA first round concluded the other day with the Rockets beating the Oklahoma City Thunder in Game 7. So the round 2 matchups are the Lakers will be playing the Rockets in round 2. The Clippers will be playing the Nuggets. The Bucks playing the Heat. And finally, the Raptors playing the Celtics. Some series have already gotten underway. The Celtics are currently up 2-1 on the Raptors, and the Bucks are currently down 0-2 to the Heat, and then the Clippers are up 1-0 on the Nuggets. The only series that has not started is the Lakers-Rockets series. They play tonight. But, Jack, any thoughts, any surprises in the first round that you saw? Anything that you see going into the second round? And is there any interesting predictions that you may have for this second round of NBA playoff action?
I don't think there'll be any real upsets coming around, but I think if there were to be an upset, I think the biggest upset would definitely be Heat. And if we're being realistic, I think it's going to be the Bucks to win that probably in 6 or 7 games. But if they don't bounce back, I think they play tonight. If they don't bounce back, that's going to be really tough to watch because the Bucks are definitely a championship contender and a championship favorite too. And I don't think anyone thought that the Heat coming in would take 2 games away from the Bucks. So I think the biggest surprise, and we already saw the biggest surprise in my opinion, is how well the Heat are playing. Sure, they did have some clutch moments, especially with those Jimmy Butler free throws, but I don't necessarily think that surprise and upset are the same thing because I've been surprised on how well the Heat have been playing. They've taken down, in my opinion, best or second best team in the league, depending on how you look at it. They've taken 2 games away from them, so I think if you're a Bucks fan, you probably shouldn't be worried now. You're probably going to win, but still, the Heat have taken 2 games away from you already, and you're a championship contender. So that's kind of saying something that maybe you should not really reevaluate, but maybe you should you hope the team gets back on track, obviously. But I think that's the biggest surprise so far. Upset? Do I think they're going to upset them? No. But this is kind of worrying for the Bucks because if you're losing 2 games to a team that I don't think anyone thought would go in to playoffs this far and take the Bucks to 2 games, I think that's kind of worrying for you because if you face up against a team that's red hot like the Lakers right now, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I'm not going to be making a prediction right now on the series. It's hard for me. I think the Bucks definitely still have a good chance, but I think the Heat up 2-0 makes it really hard for the Bucks. Honestly, if I had to pick a team right now, I think I'd probably pick the Heat, but it'd be very close to being 7. Any team right now, I think this is gonna go 7 games. But the first round was pretty predictable. Both the first seeds 1 and 5. The Raptors won quickly. The Clippers, Mavericks series that was entertaining really up until Game 5 when the Clippers started to pull away, and they ended up winning 6. And then obviously 2 Game 7s between the Nuggets, Jazz, and then Rockets, Thunder were both very entertaining, along with the 76ers getting swept, which was probably a surprise to a lot of people. 76ers are a very talented team, just they just aren't really meshing well right now. It's interesting to see where that 76ers team will go. The people are saying, the process has failed. I think they got 1 more year to go at it because, they made the conference finals last year before. So I still think they have the talent. I still think they have the ability to make it far in the playoffs. I just think that this year, with Ben Simmons being out, it was tough for them. I don't think the process has failed. I just think it's going slower than expected. I think they've got one more year, maybe 2, to make it work. Jack, do you have any other thoughts on the first round or anything in the second round?
I think you covered it all. You made some good points there, so, I really don't think there's anything more to add.
All right. Let's move into now the final question of the episode. So, Jack, let me ask you the question. What was the biggest surprise from the first round of the NBA playoffs? We were just talking about it, but I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me what you thought the biggest surprise in the first round of the NBA playoffs was. Was it that the 76ers got swept? Was it that the Magic didn't get swept? Was it that the Heat were able to sweep the Pacers? Was it that Jazz blew that 3-1 lead? 3-1 lead. What was it? What was the biggest surprise in your opinion, in your eyes, from the first round?
You said that it was a pretty predictable first round, and it was predictable with the outcomes. But with some things that happened, it wasn't predictable at all. Jazz versus Nuggets, I think that was one of the most surprising things. Obviously, that 3-1 lead. But Jamal Murray absolutely popped off in I think it was final 3 games, final 4 maybe. That was just crazy. The Magic taking a few games from the Bucks. It was only one game, but that was kind of worrying if you're a Bucks fan because you're dropping games to 2 teams that no one ever thought would get this. Like, no one thought the Magic were going to win a single game against the Bucks. They won a game. I don't think anyone ever saw the Heat taking 2 already from them first 2 games. That's kind of crazy, but I think probably the biggest and saddest one was the 76ers getting swept. I mean, of course, they don't have Ben Simmons, who went down with a knee injury, but they tanked for so long. And even with one star player out, if their tank really was that successful, they should be solid enough to at least win 1, 2, or maybe even 3 games. If their tank was successful, they shouldn't be relying on Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons because a solid team is not a team with 2 stars or 1 star. A solid team is a team that's comprised of solid players around the board. And obviously, contending teams are going to have like 1 or 2, maybe even 3 stars. So seeing that the 76ers get swept and have an early exit in the playoffs again has got to make 76ers fans angry. Like, that is tough to watch because trust the process. The process hasn't worked at all. I still think they would have lost even with Ben Simmons. I think they just really need to add more depth to like their bench and their starting 5 because you can't have Joel Embiid carrying the team. He's one of the best centers in the league, but Joel can't do it all. So I think they really got to add more pieces.
I mean, I don't think the season was a fail. I mean, the process isn't, you said you kind of contradict yourself there. You said that that a solid team doesn't just have 2 stars, but then you went on to say that a contending team has 1 or 2, maybe 3 stars, and the 76ers do have 2 stars. I'd argue the 76ers 3 best players are better than the Milwaukee Bucks 3 best players. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, I think, are both better than Middleton. I don't think either of them are better than Giannis. But then I also think that Tobias Harris is better than whoever you would deem the Bucks' 3rd best player was. Eric Bledsoe will probably be my pick. But, and the Bucks are still contending. But I think that the 76ers, they have a solid team. They got good players on the team. It's just that it's like they just can't. It just doesn't. It's kind of confusing. It just doesn't seem to work right. They're just not working right together. And also they were a 6 seed too. You couldn't expect them to go into that and beat. You can't expect a team you can't expect the lower seeded team to go in and win the series. You can't expect that of them. I think we definitely did expect them to do better than they did. I think the Ben Simmons injury hurt, but I agree with you in the fact that they probably should have won at least a game. I think winning the series without Ben Simmons was too much to ask, and even with Ben Simmons, to expect him to win the series, I also think is too much to ask.
So that's going to wrap up today's episode of the JBA All In Podcast. Just a quick heads up for anyone that made it to the end of the episode. Like Brendan mentioned in the beginning, our upload schedule will be changing. So be on the lookout for our videos at the end of the week and beginning of the weekend, so you guys have something to enjoy once you get out of school or work or whatever. Well, that's pretty much going to wrap it up. We're currently streaming on YouTube and Podbean, so share it with your friends, comment, like, subscribe, do whatever you want to do, and make sure to check us out in our next video. Thank you.